John the First of France was king from the moment he was born. That's because his father, Louis X, had died whilst Louis's queen was pregnant with John. Louis had been playing a game of real tennis, which he particularly enjoyed. After concluding the game, the exhausted king appears to have drunk too much wine to quench his thirst, and he fell ill and died soon after. He was only 26 years of age. A few months of waiting to see the sex of Louis's child followed, and John was born in November 1316. Sadly, he succumbed to the perils of life in the Middle Ages, and John lived only a few days. Because of the unusual nature of John's kingship, he is known as John the Posthumous. Henry II of England, like many medieval kings, had a ferocious temper. Sometimes the king's rages would become such that they would develop an almost comical element to them. When driven to extreme anger, Henry would throw himself onto the floor and start chewing the hay that was strewn across the ground, whilst literally foaming at the mouth. However, Henry also had a good sense of humour. Perhaps bored of sycophantic courtiers, Henry liked to play pranks on them whilst travelling. The king would cause chaos by either rising from his bed especially early and setting off on his next journey, leaving his followers to scramble and catch him up, or else sleep in until midday, leaving everyone around him to wait for him, bored and irritated. And the fun didn't stop there with Henry either. Whilst on the road, Henry would deliberately take random and misdirecting turns, confusing all his followers. The king and his retinue would end up staying in some horrid, run-down little town. Henry would, of course, stay in the most habitable of houses, whilst everyone else would be left to literally fight over what were described as pigsties. Henry knew how to humble the most proud of his men. Whilst he was laying siege to the English held Roxburgh Castle, the Scottish king, James II, was killed while standing near a cannon. According to the chronicler Robert Lindsay of Pitt Scotty, James's thigh bone was literally cut in two after the cannon exploded, and in Robert's words, the king was stricken to the ground and died hastily. After he was killed at the Battle of Hastings, the body of King Harold II was mutilated horribly by the Norman victors. As such, it became virtually unrecognizable, and it was left to Harold's concubine, Edith Swanneck, to identify his body by recognizing marks known only to her, including on his chest. After Harold's body was finally identified, it was taken to Waltham Abbey in Essex for burial. Einhard served at the court of Charlemagne and wrote a biography of the great Frankish king and eventual emperor. Einhard gives a fascinating insight into not only Charles's career, but he also paints a vivid picture of the man himself, writing, Charles was heavily built, sturdy, and of considerable stature, although not exceptionally so. He had a round head, large and lively eyes, a slightly larger nose than usual, white but still attractive hair, a bright and cheerful expression, a short and fat neck, and he enjoyed good health. except for a series of fevers in his final few years. Isabella of Angoulême was the queen of King John of England and the mother of John's successor, Henry III. After John's passing in 1216, Isabella created a scandal in her second marriage to Hugh X of Lusignan. Hugh was betrothed to Isabella's daughter, Joan, but both Hugh and Isabella disregarded this, and their marriage scandalously went ahead. Predictably, outrage followed, with Isabella attempting to make excuses for her behaviour. The situation soon became messy, with the Pope becoming involved, but eventually Joan was instead married to the King of Scotland, Alexander III, and Isabella would give Hugh 9 children. In 1042, the King of England, Harthacnut, died at a wedding feast. His death was described by the Anglo Saxon chronicles thus: Harthacnut died as he stood at his drink, and he suddenly fell to the earth with an awful convulsion, and those who were close by took hold of him, and he spoke no word afterwards. Of Viking descent, Harthacnut would have been no stranger to drinking heavily, and it's possible that this brought about the dramatic nature of his death. However, William of Poitiers stated that Harthacnut had suffered frequently from illness, and it has been speculated in recent times that he suffered from tuberculosis, although there is not much evidence to support that belief.